Hello pilots and welcome to Motion RC. So you've decided to make the plunge into RC aviation, and this is your video to teach you all about your first aircraft if you're going to be using our Futaba 6L and hooking it up on one of our RC aircraft. Now, in this video, I'm going to be using our 64mm F-22. That does not mean this is what we recommend for your first aircraft, but we know a lot of guys are going to buy this airplane with this radio at Christmas time and set it up together, and we want you to have as much success as we possibly can. Now, if you go over to motionrc.com, we do have a tab full of trainer aircraft available here at Motion RC that are really going to be a better suit for this, but because we know that a lot of guys get this exact airplane, we're going to go on and show you exactly how to do it with this model. Now, before we get going, once again, you need to get your aircraft. Go on and get it assembled. It's going to be different per aircraft. We have assembly videos on most of the aircraft here at motionrc.com if you want to follow along with any of those to get them put together. When it comes to the radio setup, this is the portion we're going to be using it for. Now, this aircraft does not have flaps or retracts to worry about. This is a very simple aircraft, which most people that are starting in the hobby need to start with something like this, where it has ailerons, elevator, rudder, throttle, and that's everything you need to deal with. So, before we get going too far, let's jump down to the radio and let's go over some setup stuff before we actually start plugging anything in. All right, so first off, let's talk about your 6L radio and what the functions and all the sticks do. On this side of the transmitter, you have the throttle channel here. This is the stick that moves and goes into one position. That way, if you set your throttle at a certain position, it just stays there while you're flying to keep that throttle at the same setting. That stick also controls the rudder, which is the yaw of the aircraft, which is left and right like this. Now, this one also controls your steering servo. So, along with making the yaw control of the aircraft, it also is going to turn your nose wheel or tail wheel to steer the aircraft on the ground. On the other side, this stick is your elevator. When you pull the stick towards the bottom, the aircraft will pitch up, making it go up. When you push the stick down, the aircraft will pitch down, causing the aircraft to go down. Then, that stick also controls what's called the ailerons of the aircraft, left and right. So when you push the stick to the right, the aircraft's going to roll to the right. If you push the stick to the left, the aircraft's going to roll to the left. You also have a switch right here. This can be a two-position switch for landing gear. You also have a rotary knob over here on the other side. This is where you could put your flaps for the aircraft, so you have infinitely adjustable up and down. Now, what's going to set this radio apart from other radios on the website is this is not a computerized radio. So you're not going to have dual rates, which is where you can make the stick softer, or it's also not going to have programmable mixes as far as flaps. You'll hear us in a lot of videos talk about when you put your flaps down, it automatically puts down elevator mix. You're not going to get this in this radio, but that's something you can look at for future upgrades. The other thing you're not going to have that we do in a lot of our videos is a three-position switch for your flaps. Like I said, once again, you have a roller knob for the flaps here. So when you hear us talk about that in some of our videos, you'll know what we're talking about now. Now, on the back of this radio, behind the battery bay, you're going to see these switches right here. These are your reversing pots. I will go on and tell you at this step, let's go on and reverse channel 3 from where it is out of the box. On Futaba, channel 3 is your throttle. Channel 3 needs to be reversed on any free-wing aircraft using this radio. So go on and flip that little switch to the reverse position before we get started. You also need to go on ahead and add 4 AA batteries to the transmitter. In my case, we already have our Admiral rechargeable batteries. That way, after flying all day, we can recharge these and we know we have fresh batteries every time we go to fly. All right, so at this point, it's time to actually get our receiver, also known as an RX, installed into the aircraft. And then this part is the transmitter, also known as a TX. Now, these should come linked together right out of the box, but we are going to go over if for some reason they aren't linked together, how to bind the transmitter to the receiver. Now, the first thing we need to do is get power to the receiver. Power is going to come from the BEC already installed in the aircraft. The BEC is what provides power to your receiver and is built into most free-wing and flightline aircraft as part of the ESC, or electronic speed control. There will be a wire labeled throttle coming up to the front of the aircraft. That wire is going to provide the signal and the power for the throttle channel and the receiver. Now, on most aircraft, the throttle channel is going to have a white, a red, and a black. White is always your signal wire, red is your positive power, and black is your negative. Now, the alternative to that is sometimes these are going to be color-coded as yellow, red, and brown. In this situation, yellow is your signal wire, red is still your positive, and brown is going to be the ground wire. This is universal across all free-wing and flightline aircraft, so you won't have to worry about mixing that up. It's going to be one of those two colors right out of the box. So, for our first step, what we need to go on and do is locate port 3 on our receiver. Port 3 is going to be our throttle channel. Let's take that throttle wire and we're going to plug the signal wire, which is white, up towards the numbers. Now, on most receivers, they're going to be indicating which way your signal is. Now remember, on this particular receiver, signal wire goes towards the numbers. Let me get that plugged in to channel 3, and I'll show you right there. My signal wire is towards the numbers. All right, now, you shouldn't need to bind your aircraft at this point, but if you do, the way to enter bind mode, you're gonna hold both sticks down into the middle, then turn the transmitter on. You will see the transmitter LED starts to flash. You now have 15 seconds to plug in the aircraft. We're gonna plug it in, we're gonna look at the indicator light on the receiver, and we're gonna wait for it to turn solid green. Now that it's turned solid green, you actually heard the aircraft arm. If we hold the aircraft and bump the throttle, we should hear the throttle run. We do. Now, before we go any further, the next step is to do a throttle calibration. So let's unplug the aircraft. Now we're going to take our throttle stick and go to full throttle. I'm also going to set my trim all the way to the bottom. There's a trim right here beside the throttle. This way, every time we know we just need to put the throttle trim all the way to the bottom, and it's going to be in the right position. Sometimes if you power on the aircraft and your trim's in a different spot, it won't actually arm. So let's go on and set that all the way to the bottom, throttle stick all the way to the top. We're going to plug the aircraft in, and we're going to listen for 2 beeps from the ESC. When we hear that, we're going to bring our stick down to 0. Here we go. 2 beeps, down to 0. And now you have the arming sequence. What that did was set the throttle position at the bottom and the top so the ESC knows exactly where no throttle and full throttle is on this aircraft. Now we can start going through and actually plugging in our ports for all of our control surfaces. For this, your ailerons are going to go into port 1. Your elevator is going to go into port 2. Throttle is already plugged in, and that's your port 3. Rudder is going to be port 4. And your reverse thrust, in this case, is going to be port 5. Now, if you have an aircraft with landing gear, you're going to plug those into port 5. And if you have flaps, they're going to go into port 6. In our situation, we don't have landing gear or flaps, so we're going to plug that reverse thrust into 5. Now that we have everything plugged in, we can quickly verify that our elevator works, our ailerons work, and our rudder works. If for some reason one is not working at this point, go down to your receiver and make sure you didn't accidentally plug one of them in backwards. Remember, yellow and white are your signal wires and should be facing the numbers. If you plug one in backwards, it's not gonna work right now. The next step in this process is to start making sure everything is going the correct direction. So first off, let's run the throttle in the position we want it. I want my reverse switch up. I like it whenever I power on any transmitter that all switches should be up and away from me before starting flight. So I'm going to put my reverse switch in the position I want it. Then I'm going to simply run the aircraft with my hand near it to make sure it goes the right direction. And it does. Now we can also verify whether the reverse works by flipping the switch and then adding power in again. And it's going the other direction. So perfect, we have reverse thrust set up. If it's running the wrong way, you just go onto the dip switches in the back and you're gonna reverse channel 5. So our next thing to check is our elevator. Always do a control check standing behind the aircraft where you're looking at it from right now, not where I'm at. And you want to verify everything goes the right direction. So if we pull the elevator stick down or towards us, we should see the elevator deflect up. We do not. As you can see, it is going the wrong direction. So we can always look in here and see which port we put it in. Elevator is currently in port 2. So on the back of the transmitter, we can open the switch cover, grab a small screwdriver, then we simply go to the port we'd like to reverse and flip the dip switch. You can see this switch right here for 2. Let's flip that the other way. Now, when we pull up on the elevator, we should see up elevator. And we do. That's as simple as that is. Now we need to check the ailerons. When we roll to the right aileron should go up. And it does. When we roll to the left aileron should go up. If it's backwards, simply reverse that channel. In this situation, it would be channel 1. But it's correct, so we don't need to reverse that one. So, our next control surface to check is our rudders. Now, the 64mm F-22 does not actually have physical rudders, but what it does have is a steerable nose wheel. So what we need to do is flip the aircraft over and verify when we go to the right, the aircraft's gonna go to the right. When we go to the left, the aircraft's gonna go to the left. Now, it's a little confusing when it's upside down. Remember, it's the opposite direction if you're looking at it this way. It's a little easier to do this if it's setting on its gear, but I wanted to show you that moving when I move the control surface. So at this point, the other thing we can do is actually dial a little bit of trim in. So I can physically see that my steering trim is off. It's pointed over to the side a little bit. You can physically change it on the arm inside, or if it's off just a little bit like it is here, this pot right here controls the rudder trim. If we move that, you're gonna see the wheel start to move ever so slightly, just like that. So we can center the wheel using that trim, or once again, go inside and physically move that trim. Speaking of trims, you also have one beside the elevator. This one's gonna actually adjust the elevator when we move it. You can see, and we have lots of different trims, so you can click that in wherever you need it. You also have an aileron trim right here. As we move that, it's gonna put that trim in. This is so while you're in flight, if the airplane is constantly banking to one side or the other, you can fine tune that and make it where it flies straight and level at all times. Now, while we have the aircraft upside down, I want to talk about another thing you can do. Because there is no low rates or high rates on this, we can mechanically adjust the control surfaces to have less throw. The way you're going to do that is with these little pieces out here. If we push this rubber part in and unsnap this, we can actually pop this little piece out gently, like so. So, To get less throw, we want to go furthest in we can without binding against anything, and then furthest out on the control surface. Now, when you move it, they may be in a different position. In order to make this straight and level again, I need to screw this out to get this straight and level. We can clip it in and test it again. And now our control surfaces is nice, flat, and level. You want as little throw as you can get right now on the ailerons to make it less sensitive. Now if we go left and right, you can see we have a whole lot less throw than what we did originally. You can see this side moves a huge amount, whereas this side moves a very small amount. So if you're flying this aircraft exactly, I highly recommend moving that in all the way and this one out all the way. We need to make both sides match now, so we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Now, if you want more throw, it's always a matter of the arm. You can start to move this out holes to get more throw, and that will give you faster responses. If you get all the way to the outside of this one, you can start moving this one down to get more throw. So if you were to reverse what we have right now and put this one in the upper position, this one in the bottom position, that's going to give you the most deflection you can possibly get. We have the least right now because this is a beginner video. We can also do the exact same thing on our elevator. As you can see, we have a ton of elevator right now, which is going to be very sensitive. So in order to fix that, once again, we can pop it off and move these around. All right, so at this point, I flipped the aircraft back over. Let's do one last check of the control surfaces. Up is up, down is down, left and right, all correct. So at this point, we actually have the aircraft pretty much ready to go. What you'll need to do at this point is charge up whatever battery is going to work with your aircraft before heading to the field. In this case, we have our 2200 4S battery for the F-22. We do carry the Admiral line of packs here, along with all capable chargers of charging these aircraft. Yeah, you now have your aircraft pretty much set up and ready to go. The one last thing we need to do is secure our receiver before we go fly. So I like to use 3M double-sided sticky tape. You just take this, put it on the bottom of your receiver, then pull the paper off, and you can actually secure the receiver down in the aircraft, just like that. Then we need to make sure our receiver wire is in the aircraft somewhere away from batteries or ESCs or anything else. We want this away from electronics. Now in the case of this aircraft, I'm actually just going to tuck it down in there, right in the nose. There's nothing down in there. There's no magnets or anything else right in this area, so it's away from everything. All right, so then now that we've got it all in there, let's make sure our canopy fits. There we go. Fits perfectly, and that is that. Now, before you actually go fly your aircraft, whatever model it is, you need to look in the manual and figure out what the CG, or center of gravity, is for that aircraft. Now, on the F-22, it's about here. I kind of just know where it is on this one, but it's going to be labeled in your manual. Once you figure out where that is, you're going to hold the aircraft from the balance point in front of you like this, and the aircraft should balance right there on those marks in front of you. If you get this aircraft too tail heavy, it will be uncontrollable and you will not be able to fly it. That is a very important step. Every model here at Motion RC will go over the center of gravity of the aircraft. Always check that before every flight. You can shift the battery forward or backwards to change the CG. If you can't get the battery far enough forward to make your CG mark, you can always add lead. I like to use the little tire weights off of Amazon or anywhere else you want to get lead double-sided stickies at, and you can move those in the back or the front, wherever you need them, to make your battery CG exactly the same. We know not all customers are going to use our batteries, and that's why it's going to be a little different depending on whatever brand battery you buy for the aircraft, what you need to do to hit CG. Well, okay, pilots, I hope you're ready to go out and fly your model airplane. Remember, you can get any kind of model you want from right here at motionrc.com. If you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. We do tips like this all the time to try and help you as the hobbyist have the most successful time flying your model airplane. Until next time, whether it's air, land, or sea, you can get it right here at Motion RC. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.